Hello everyone, Obscure Titan here with another essay on the Shantae series. I discussed it with two videos on the lore's need of improvements, one for Roditops, another for Sky, and one for Harmony. But how can I make essays on the Shantae series without this titular character? Shantae. There's something about Shantae's character that fascinates people on many levels, going from her character design, which despite receiving small changes here and there, maintains the overall look that are familiar to her colorful personality. She is the half-genie hero. But in terms of where she lands as far as idealistic or realistic goes, she tends to land in between them, though leans more on the latter. What do I mean by this? Well, think of idealistic heroes as being the ideal versions of what heroes could become. But there's been an increase of heroes with flaws that we can relate to. While there are some that are more compelling, Shantae is still a solid protagonist we can root for. For this essay, we'll look at 3 segments by using 2 games for each of them. In each segment, we'll start with her personality, her character growth, and then the nuances of her actions. On a side note, there's going to be tons of spoilers, and if you rather play the games first, close off this video and play them instead, and then come back after you're done. Let's rat to go.
Hey! This place...
As it's already established just a moment ago, we'll summarize the plots of the GBC game and Risky Revolution. They'll serve as foundations of how Shantae started off her personality. I know Risky Revolution is the most recent game that came out, but it's fundamentally a 2005 GBA game that would follow up from the GBC game. So having this in the segment makes sense. Shantae is a guardian of Scuttletown who protects it from evil and risky boots. However, said villain already invaded the town, and Shantae has to rescue the Genie Guardians captured in their cages in each dungeon. The game has have Genie go around Sequin Land to rescue the Genies, and then defeat risky boots. But one thing to note right off the bat is her self-esteem problems. Knowing that she's only half Genie instead of a pure Genie, this puts a lot of pressure on Shantae fulfilling her duties protecting Scuttletown. She cares about its people very deeply, but she's extremely limited in her power and not as phenomenally cosmic as she would hope for. This makes it difficult for her to be as good as her predecessors, and often beats herself up at points. This Genie's got layers. On the flip side, there is a more joyous part of her where she has a strong sense of justice, but in a more childlike way. She is naive, but not dumb. Shantae enjoys company around her friends and even strives to seeing people be better. For the most part, despite her bubbly personality, Shantae can be pretty stubborn and quite obnoxiously defensive. You can tell from Risky Revolution where she tends to argue with Sky, Mayor Scuttlebutt, and Mimic at times. Much of Risky Revolution is similar, but it revolves around the continental shifts of the planet. This doesn't necessarily rewrite Shantae's personality. If anything, the game itself, as a canonical sequel, advances her characteristics more obviously than in the GBC game. We can see how she's working to being an idealistic hero, but often fails due to her stubbornness and impatience. That being said, it's her desire for growth of others and overall kindness that makes Shantae an admirable protagonist.
Hey! This place...
The biggest, and arguably the most important aspect of Shantae as a character is her growth. Going from a shy and poorly esteemed underdog into a strong and determined hero. Risky's revenge continues where the GBC game left off, or Risky Revolution as of 2025, and shows Risky causing mayhem to Scuttletown, but this time, Shantae gets fired by Mayor Scuttlebutt. This upsets Shantae to a great deal, and now has to venture off elsewhere. But as she went on with her adventures, she interacts with Roditops, Ammo Baron, Hippo Baron, Mimic, and so on, and it further deepens Shantae as a character. But it only gets worse for Shantae as she faces Risky Boots in the end. It turned out that Roditops worked alongside Risky for her plans in exchange for a large supply of coffee, which serves as an alternative to human brains. This caused Roditops to regret her decision but ended up leaving. Worse still is Risky takes Shantae's magic and creates a dark clone of herself, so Shantae ended up being a human from that point onward. Pirate's Curse is without a doubt the darkest and most important installment of the series. Continuing from Risky's revenge, Shantae is fully human. Her only use of attack is her hair whip, and was very close to losing it after being told that Ammo Baron now has control over Scuttletown. She was not a fan of this at all, but had no choice except to abide by his demands via Mimic's request. Throughout the game, Shantae has undergone difficult situations that push her to grow as a person. Risky's revenge continued the growth that had started out in the GBC game, and presumably Risky Revolution. Now we see her making significant changes to adapt in ridiculous scenarios. Her desire to see others grow is significant, especially in Pirate's Curse. It's debated whether if Shantae's compassion towards Risky Boots is ever at all warranted, especially considering the fact that Risky not only has constantly raided people's lands and goods, but has also stolen Shantae's magic. You would think that she would want nothing to do with Risky at all or have her locked up. But it seems as though that Shantae has given Risky multiple chances, even in 7 Sirens. which has weirded out her friends so much, especially Sky, and rightfully so. Well, it's not just her lifelong conflict that they share with each other. This constant back and forth has made Shantae a stronger, smarter, and overall resilient guardian than she had ever been before. The fact that she uses Risky's equipment throughout Pirate's Curse is a notable attribute that fans love about it. Shantae has grown into a formidable opponent for Risky to face against, and her growing to being a more determined hero has made Shantae a respectable half-genie guardian. Since she got her magic back from the Pirate Master, Shantae has developed so much to the point of getting her old job back after restoring Scuttletown.
Hey! This place...
Half-Genie Hero as a story isn't as well constructed as the previous entries since it's just a rehashed compilation with some tweaks here and there, but Shantae as a character has remained steady for the most part. If there is one nitpick to make about Shantae's character in Half-Genie Hero, it's her interactions with Holly, the supposed new Half-Genie hire who would take Shantae's job. It turned out that Holly is a memory leech who takes people's memories so that she remains active in existence. Otherwise, people remembering would cause her to vanish. While much of Shantae's interactions remain largely similar, as well as her moral compass, it seemed to have been compromised quite a bit when it came to Holly. Something in the lines of the Diamonds in Steven universe where they are literal space dictators as Steven tried redeeming them and sadly succeeded. Where some jackass on the road is far less offending and gets completely shafted with no redemption. Though in fairness, Holly still displays some level of threat via taking people's memories, so her actions may not be as vile as Risky, but still a threat nonetheless. As for Seven Sirens, it's marginally an improvement for Shantae as a character. She maintained much of her personality and growth from prior games in the series. Seven Sirens starts with Shantae and friends making their trip to Paradise Island to visit the Half-Genies to play a ceremony together. However, they would end up being taken away, except for Shantae herself, and must rescue them. On the surface, it looks like a carbon copy of the GBC game, story-wise. And in some aspects, it does. The genies being taken away into captivity, Shantae locating elements that advance the storyline, and the battle against Risky Boots. But it has its differences. They're half-genies this time with their own designs and personalities. The location is Paradise Island with its own mazes, and a heavy emphasis on the lore behind the genies. Shantae as a character remains similar to who she was prior, a naive but noble hero who strives for the betterment of people, even if it's Risky Boots. Her naive outlook makes Shantae an adoring character to root for. Despite increasing opportunities that await her, Shantae's relationship with Scuttletown kept her core characteristics as is. Because if there's no half-genie as good as Shantae, harmony aside, then who would protect Scuttletown without compromising their integrity? While her stubbornness can be a character flaw, that can also be a strength for the half-genie. Shantae suspects something is off when anything adjacent to her past enemies sets off red flags. Armor Bearer, for instance, sets off several red flags to Shantae right away, implying that he's just as slimy of a bastard as his brother Ammo Baron is, despite Sky hinting on him initially. Part of her moral code is looking out for people who need to be aware of suspiciously bad actors, intentionally doing bad things for their benefit. That being said, Shantae's methods don't always go as well as she intended to. After all, good intentions pave the way to hell. A good example is in Seven Sirens where Shantae ventures into Paradise Island, where she was instructed not to. At first she wanted to save the half-genies, and that's a good intention. However, her methods doing so are reckless and would not only cost her nearly being beaten at times, but also risking other safety. This is true when nearing the end of the game once the war machine was awakened by Risky and the Empress Siren. Despite Shantae's reckless methods though, you can tell that those were heat-at-the-moment scenarios. You can understand why she did those things, but none of those justify or excuse her rudimentary actions and would suffer consequences for them. She deliberately disobeyed Mimic not once, but twice in both Seven Sirens and even in Pirate's Curse. This isn't to say that Shantae doesn't make things right. Shantae defeated the Empress Siren, she was able to save the half-genies, as well as Paradise Island. We've seen protagonists in established franchises who go through changes on where they were before and became different. Ideally better, and sometimes they can make the best character growth in fiction. But it could also make some of the worst. Shantae is definitely on the former, as it's being one of the better character growths.
Hey! This place...
To sum this all up, Shantae is a solid protagonist for not only having character flaws we can understand and relate to, but also finding ways for her character growth and even seeing the nuance of her actions as well as intentions. It's not difficult to see why this character has built a solid foundation as we've seen her being, going from 2002 on the Game Boy Color to multiple platforms in 2025, including PC gaming. There's not a doubt that Shantae will remain relevant for a good long time now that WayForward has built their official flagship IP to represent them, going forward with new ideas to explore and innovate their gameplay for years to come. That's all I have to say for today, and I hope you all enjoyed this essay. Feel free to subscribe, like, and comment. Over and out.
The shimmering stars of the evening, they are yours.